针对高额彩礼问题，要结合实际拿出约束性规范和倡导性标准，也要加强对农村适婚群体的公益性婚恋服务和关心关爱。需要强调的是群众思想观念、生活方式的转变需要有过程。农村移风易俗要避免用疾风骤雨、一刀切的办法硬干蛮干，而是要常抓不懈、绵绵用力，德运人心，画风成俗。
On the issue of exorbitant bride prices, it has already been explicitly mentioned by name in the number 1 central document. And this time, everyone can feel that it is no longer a toothless call that only scratches an itch through a boot, but a real hard-hitting crackdown with thunderous measures. Like a sharp sword, it points straight at the exorbitant bride prices entrenched in society. So have you ever thought about how today's bride prices, which can easily reach tens or even hundreds of thousands of yuan, came to be? And under state intervention, can the problem be solved? Recently, some scholars selected 120,000 cases related to bride price from over 90 million judicial cases on China judgments online, and discovered a shocking truth. It turns out that bride prices in China were not always this high. Over the past 20 years, there has been a very crucial turning point. According to statistics, from 1996 to 2007, bride prices in China remained at a relatively low level. Across the country, whether in the wealthy Jiangsu, Zhejiang, Shanghai region, or in remote central and western areas, bride prices were mostly concentrated at 10,000 to 30,000 yuan, basically within a level ordinary people could accept. Bride prices back then truly were only meant as a token for good luck. But by 2008, something started to feel off. Bride price amounts in China began to surge all the way upward. In 2 years they broke 40,000, in 5 years they broke 60,000, in 7 years they broke 80,000, and in 9 years they broke 100,000. In just 15 short years, China's bride prices increased by as much as 14 times, far outpacing wage growth and GDP growth. And 2008 was the key turning point. Starting from that year, bride prices in China were no longer simply about good luck, but became a tool for some people to get rich. What many people cannot understand is, why 2008? After reviewing a large amount of information, I ultimately found that there may have been 3 key reasons. The first reason was the acceleration of urbanization. In 2008, China's urbanization rate was only around 45%, but now, 17 years later, China's urbanization rate is already close to 70%. Over these 17 years, 200 million people moved from rural areas into cities. After moving into cities, they needed to settle down and establish a foothold, because whether it is children's schooling or medical care for the elderly, everything is tightly tied to housing and the official family record. So in a sense, bride price is actually a marriage permit, or in other words, a city entry permit. The logic is simple. When 2 young people come to the city and start talking about marriage, they inevitably have to consider buying a home. So the woman's side uses the bride price as a standard to judge whether the man has the ability to settle down and establish himself in the city. Note that the time point I am talking about is around 2008. Back then, in many families, it was the default that the bride price would be brought back to the new small family. The bride price was almost equal to the startup funds for the young couple to buy a home. Unlike today, when some people not only do not bring the bride price back, but also demand that the man buy a home in full. This has indeed become excessively outrageous. Once bride price is tied to settling down and establishing a foothold, it inevitably causes a region's bride price level to be highly tied to local housing prices. And after 2008, what happened to China's real estate industry? We have all seen it with our own eyes. Some people might say, if that's what you claim, then since housing prices in Shenzhen are so high, shouldn't bride prices in Shenzhen be extremely high as well? But the reality is that in many areas of Guangdong, bride prices are generally only several tens of thousands of yuan, and even now it remains a nationwide lowland. Why does this happen? When I compared big data, I indeed found this issue. The regions with the highest bride prices in China are the Greater Yangtze River Delta area, meaning the surrounding provinces with Shanghai as the core, specifically including Shanghai, Zhejiang, Fujian, Jiangxi, Jiangsu, and so on. Among them, Jiangxi, due to an excessively distorted sex ratio at birth, makes its average bride price dominate the country. The second highest bride price region is the Huang-Huai area, including eastern Hunan, eastern Shandong, northern Anhui, plus most of Shaanxi. Bride prices in these places are also stubbornly high. Finally, bride prices in the two Guang regions and the southwestern provinces are basically low-priced. Divorce there is relatively easy. Why are the Yangtze River Delta and the Pearl River Delta both developed, yet bride prices differ so dramatically? The reason is actually very simple. These two regions follow two completely different development models. To make it easier for everyone to understand, let me give an example. Xiao Wang is a local from Hangzhou, works at an internet company, earns 20,000 yuan a month, and has a loving local girlfriend. When he is preparing to get married, the woman's parents will often propose conditions, to avoid downward mobility, and to secure better living conditions and education guarantees. They demand that Xiao Wang produce a 380,000 yuan bride price, and in addition, spend 1,500,000 yuan to buy an apartment in the core urban area of Hangzhou. In their eyes, this is the survival qualification for the city of Hangzhou. But in Shenzhen, the situation is completely different. Shenzhen has almost no locals. Everyone is from somewhere else. You might be from Hubei, and your girlfriend might be from Hunan. So when both sides start talking about marriage, they will not overly consider the issue of a city survival qualification certificate. After all, in Shenzhen, most people rent homes, and the proportion of people who can buy a home may be less than 30% of the total population. This determines that in Shenzhen, marriage and home buying are not a bundled option. Guangdong's open economy and cultural atmosphere make population mobility extremely fast. Social relationships are not so tightly bound, and people place more emphasis on personal choice and freedom. So in marriage, there are not so many extra conditions. If you go to Guangdong and take a look, you will know. When locals marry off their daughters, the bride price is often casually given. 28,888 is fine, 18,888 is also fine, and if you are truly struggling, 8,888 is not a problem either. Bride price is more about good luck, not about treating a daughter as a commodity. But in Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai, cities have large populations, high housing prices, intense competition, and tight education resources. More importantly, locals' relationship networks are deeply intertwined. Under constant comparison and rivalry, pressure piles up together, and in the end it shows up as sky-high bride prices. The second reason is changes in population structure. Fetal sex identification technology probably became popular starting in the early 1990s. If we calculate by time, the 18-year period from 1990 to 2008 means that the cohort of fetuses that were selected back then had already grown up into adults by around 2008. When they entered society, they were shocked to find that there was a large shortage of women in the same age group, and finding a marriage partner did not seem easy. When there are more men than women, a viciously competitive market emerges. Many sky-high bride prices were proposed by the man's side proactively, in order to raise their competitiveness. When more and more people do this, bride prices naturally rise. This also explains why Jiangxi has the highest bride prices in the country. Many people think, Jiangxi's housing prices are not high, so bride prices should not be that outrageous. The reason it turned out this way is because Jiangxi is one of the regions with the most severe gender imbalance in the country. With multiple factors combined, Jiangxi became China's bride price highland. The third reason is the comprehensive spread of the internet. If we look at the national bride price growth curve, we can see it clearly. Besides the obvious turning point in 2008, there is another acceleration node around 2016. Why 2008 and 2016? One reason is that in 2007, the first generation of smartphones appeared globally, and accessing information by phone began to spread. Large numbers of ordinary people at the bottom could see what people across the country were saying and doing. The second reason is the 2016 wave of housing prices doubling, plus the formal popularization of short videos and live streaming, which made information fully transparent. In the past, if Jiangxi had a 380,000 yuan bride price, people in neighboring Hubei might not know. But in the internet era, a rich young man in Shanghai giving his girlfriend a 1 million yuan bride price, or a big boss in Beijing buying a fully paid 2 million yuan home for his girlfriend, all of this information would be transparently presented before ordinary people. One person tells 10, 10 tell 100, and it gradually reshapes mindsets across the country, and bride prices in each province rise along with it. Under the influence of multiple factors, bride prices in China are no longer merely about good luck, but gradually become a tool for class screening. A 380,000 yuan bride price, you think they want your money, but what they really want to know is what income class your family belongs to. The French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu already made it crystal clear long ago. He said that society contains economic capital, cultural capital, and symbolic capital, and marriage is precisely the intersection of these three. In plain words, in this society, some people have money, some people have education and insight, and some people have social status. And marriage is the most convenient way to screen these three major factors. You only need to propose a bride price standard, and add a home buying requirement. No further observation is needed, and you can instantly see that person's family background and class. There is no simpler and more brutal way of identification than bride price. This is the real reason why bride price became widespread in China. However, with state intervention, as the pace of urbanization begins to slow, as housing prices begin to adjust, and as internet-driven thinking begins to return to rationality, sky-high bride prices will gradually lose the soil they need to survive. The golden age of bride price will eventually come to an end.